Hi, this is Raja Basu. I'm very pleased to introduce my guest, Hassina Sherjan, or Hassina as I call her. Hassina is a native of Afghanistan and she is the founder of Aid Afghanistan for Education, or AA4E as we call it. Graduating from the Kennedy School at Harvard, she could have led a very comfortable life in America. House, family, friends, but she decided not to take that path. So after spending about 19 years in the West, she decided to visit her homeland, and it was very sudden because her father had passed away. And she was very curious to know what had happened to all the people that she had left behind. Now, during one of these trips, she visited a refugee camp, and what she saw in the first hour of being there literally changed her life. She came back very disturbed. For the very fact that she was leading such a comfortable life here, and the people out there in those refugee camps were practically stagnating in poverty or perishing in poverty and illiteracy. Hassina immediately realized that education, and only education, was the pathway to dignity and poverty alleviation. She started small with an initial grant from the Dutch ambassador and later with the help of USAID. And she steadily grew her programs. It was not easy, and the Taliban really found out what she was doing. They used to come beat up the teachers, but she never gave up. Hassina has been very courageous, fighting it out to get her mission going. So today, about 7,000 girls have been impacted by her programs, and this is just the beginning. There is more to come. It is also a great achievement that a number of these women have husbands who are themselves illiterate and now have a lot of respect for the women out there. A number of all these students are also doing very well for themselves in life, both in Afghanistan and in far off places across the world, in America and Europe as well. Please welcome Hassina Sherjan to Unsung and Unstoppable, and let's hear her story. Hi Hassina, this is not the first time really we are meeting. I think the second time or the third time, I really don't remember. And I expect this to be a fantastic story. And Afghanistan is something that's made me very curious, and I would also believe that a lot of our listeners would also be very curious to know exactly what you're doing for the upliftment of young girls out there. Before we start into diving a little deeper, I would like to introduce yourself a little bit, how it all started, what was your career like, and before we get into the specifics.
Hi, Raja. Thank you for having me here. Yes, of course. As far as working in a non-profit organization that I have founded, honestly, I was living in the US and having a nice American life, enjoying with family and friends, until I went to, after 19 years of being in the US, I went to a refugee camp. Why I went there is a bit of a very long story, but I ended up in a refugee camp and trying to see what happened to all the people that we had left behind in 1979 when we left Afghanistan because of the Russian invasion. So what I saw in the very first hour of being in the refugee camp changed my life for the rest of my life, actually. I realized for the first time my own ignorance of the fact that in Afghanistan we have the highest illiteracy rate and not everybody had access to education. So
did you go there as a volunteer, or was it part of just a family trip or something?
no, I didn't go as a volunteer. I was curious to just go and see what happened. to the rest of the people. And actually, it just happened after my father passed in the US, and somehow I woke up one morning and I felt like I need to go back to Afghanistan. And he was the one that always wanted to go back to Afghanistan. So but after 19 years of being in the US, I never really applied for a passport. And I didn't go out of the US except to Mexico or Canada. And we could travel with our green card to those two countries. So, yes, and the urge was very strong. So I immediately um, applied for my citizenship, and it all just happened very fast. Within 6 months, I had my passport, and I was all ready to go. But I couldn't really go into Afghanistan because there was still a proxy war going on between the Mujahideen after the Russian invasion, and this is 1996.
Right. So
Actually, no, 1995.
yeah,
So,
around that,
um,
around, and because that was really not the time the Taliban took over, right? Or Taliban took over
no,
after that,
they came in 1997. This was
1997
yes.
till 2014 or
No, no,
whatever.
no. They came in 1997, and then in 2001, the Americans, because the September 11 happened in 2001. So, and then I moved back to Afghanistan in at the end of 2001, actually. So this
So
is the second time that Taliban were in Afghanistan um, before the Americans came in. So I I ended up going to Pakistan because I could only go to Pakistan. I couldn't go into Afghanistan. So
right.
yes.
So what was the turning point for this non-profit? When did you decide to start one formally or informally, if I would ask?
Well, actually, after being in that refugee camp and realizing um, that what the real problem in Afghanistan is, because lack of education um, can um, can prevent a country from moving forward. And yes, and so many things happened within that first hour, um, and I came back to the U.S. Um, very disturbed, in fact, um, for the fact that we had very nice, comfortable lives, and all these people were living in refugee camps, were very dusty, very dirty, um, and eager or yearning for education. Um, so I could have been any of those women sitting in that refugee camp. It's pure luck that I was born in a family
Absolutely.
that could provide for me and take me to the US and give me a comfortable life. So, yes, I started talking to a lot of people. Some of the Afghan media contacted me, and then soon professional Afghans found out. And I had taken a lot of pictures and slides with me. So we had meetings with young Afghan professionals, and um, the final decision was that me and another Afghan woman who's an engineer decided that we need to start this nonprofit. So we started a nonprofit, and I was traveling back and forth from US to the to Pakistan, to the refugee camps, basically providing educational supplies to refugee camps. Um,
So, Hasina, that brings a question to my mind. How did you manage this initially remotely? I mean, traveling back and forth, back and forth. Uh, uh, so how was it like in the initial? What were the struggles like in the initial phases?
well, this was like 1996 onward until 2001. because it was very small program. So I was basically going to Pakistan and purchase some supplies for these schools, whether it was books or stationery or whatever they needed. Um, and well, back then we didn't have internet
Hmm.
access for everybody, or there was really no office. We were just doing it this way and uh, giving money of my own mostly, and maybe a few friends or some family sometimes. Um, until what happened was that in 1999, I went back inside Afghanistan during the Taliban period previously. And because it was very hard for me to believe um, that girls were not allowed to go to school or women were not working. I grew up in an Afghanistan that my mother opened the very first florist in Afghanistan. Her aunt was the very first women senator. Almost all my aunts and women that I knew were working. They were teachers. They were business women. So, so I went into Afghanistan in 1999 when I witnessed what was going on and ended up opening five underground clandestine classrooms for 250 girls. Um, and then I had to leave.
So
So,
did you?
yeah.
So it brings a very pertinent question to my mind. Uh, you born and brought up in the West, as you mentioned in the just a little while back, like anybody, leading a comfortable life. One is going into an uncharted territory, right? The and the and the most important thing which I wanted to ask you: did you ever feel scared of going there, given that all that you were hearing about the Taliban? I think that's very that is very interesting for me to know. Or
I
how did
wasn't
you?
really, I didn't grow up in the US. I grew up in Afghanistan. I was 19 when I left Afghanistan. Um, so yes, going back inside was, uh, mm, I don't know how to really explain it. It's not something. It was an experience that um, I'm very happy that I went, but at the same time, it was very disturbing. First of all, I went with a UNHCR flight into Kabul, and ICRC car was there. They actually took me to where I wanted to go. I was so disturbed I couldn't even find my relatives' home. I mean, it was I don't really have any family left in Afghanistan, but I have some distant relatives that I've heard of, so I was going to stay with them. And um, but yes, the airport when we landed was was gone. I mean, there was like pillars left, and this beautiful little small airport that I remember when my mother or my aunts or my uncles were traveling, we always went to say goodbye to them or welcome them back. And there was a beautiful restaurant on the second floor where I had the best French toast, and none of that existed anymore. And of course, and the city was dead because it reminded me of this movie called, um, what was it? After the bombing of Hiroshima, there was a movie called The Day After.
That's right. Yeah, I've
So,
heard.
yes, because people were sitting around totally soulless. Um, and it was a very interesting trip. I was there for 2 weeks.
Afghanistan, from what I've seen in National Geographic, is it's a beautiful country. Particularly, it's so rugged, so beautiful. There's a different sort of beauty in Afghanistan, and really the contrast between what was happening there politically, and you could see it on the ground, right, with the Taliban moving around with their guns on trucks, etc. Must have been a I mean, it's a real contrast of all sorts. Now, one question that I have for you is, when you first went and you started these programs, what were the uh, what were the reactions like from those little girls who
So
was
what
it was
happened was that the little girls for the underground secret classrooms, they were doing so well because they were studying very hard. I mean, that was because they had nothing else to do. But of course, the Taliban found these classes, and they had all kinds of stories of Taliban coming and beating up their teachers, and they were hiding in the chicken house outside, and it was all kinds of heart breaks, but they never stopped coming. I said, so how come you didn't stop coming to school? They said, well, this was the only place that we had friends, and we wrapped our books in the cover of the Quran so that if they stopped us, we could say that we are going to study Quran, and if and then we also decided to come one by one and not come in groups. But these girls, the third graders, were going to the fifth grade, and the fifth graders were going to the seventh grade. So they were just very happy that in 2002 all the schools opened and they were going back to school. So um, I thought that my job was over because now, schools are open and things are back to normal. Well, however, it wasn't really like that. I went to visit some of the girls' schools that were opened and did a lot of interviews with teachers and principals and saw the classrooms. And so 17, 18-year-old girls were sitting in third and fourth grade. And nobody was paying attention to this issue because in Afghanistan, girls get married very young. By 18, families want to marry them off, and we can't really change that altogether once. So I thought, we need to do something about this because back in the 1960s and 70s, we had a center in Kabul called a Women's Association. And this Women's Association was there specifically for this, because if girls get married in high school, the policy of the government said that they cannot continue their education. So they were going to this place which was called Mosase Naswan, an association for women, to finish their high school, and then they had an option of going to university, or they were also learning some vocational trainings. So this center was no longer there because they changed it. The Karzai government changed this center into women's ministry. So women's ministry closed all the programs because they became a policy-making entity.
got it.
So we were the first accelerated education program for these girls who were older. And, for example, they were like in fourth grade and Taliban were there for another 6 years. I don't exactly remember. 6 years, I think. Yes, that's how we started this accelerated education program for women and girls who were either older and they were not allowed to enter high school, or they were married because the policy was still in place where if they're married, they cannot finish their high school. But there were thousands and perhaps millions.
So, Hasina, like all nonprofits, there are the initial struggles for funding. And I think this is something that happens with all nonprofits, big or small, when they started out. So, would like to know how you got interest from donors and what exactly you did in the initial years to get your funding for your dream projects in Afghanistan.
Honestly, I was not really aware of the NGO world. I had no idea how nonprofits work, what is needed, what to do. I just had an idea. There was a problem, and I had a solution for it, but I had no idea how to go about it. So all I knew that this is a possibility of doing this through a nonprofit. So so I registered a nonprofit with the Ministry of Economics, and then of course there was the funding issue. I met the Danish ambassador at an event, and he asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to do something, but it seems like nobody really cares or they don't understand." And he said, "So come and talk to me." So I went to his office and I
So this
explained
is
to
the
him.
Danish ambassador to US, right? This
To Afghanistan. We're in
to
Afghanistan
Afghanistan.
now.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Danish embassy in Afghanistan, because all the embassies were giving funding.
Yeah,
Um,
because a lot of embassies. So why I asked this question was a lot of embassies were actually shut down. For a long period of time, where because of trouble in Afghanistan. So
no, no. See what
that's right.
happened? I'm talking about 2000. I went back to Afghanistan at the end of in December of 2001 when there was a transfer of power from President Rabbani to President Karzai, and then the Americans came. So, well, the Americans were there before because they defeated the Taliban after September 11. And um, so at that time, we had a so called democracy. And all the embassies opened. All the embassies that were closed, of course, all the embassies were closed during the previous Taliban period. And so all the embassies reopened, and they were working. I mean, there were a lot of staff, and so there was suddenly a lot of activities going on. So that this is how it actually the Danish ambassador, a wonderful, wonderful man who was the very first Danish ambassador in Afghanistan. He wrote a check for $127,000 in his office.
Wow. I mean,
When I when I
I mean,
was there, it was absolutely amazing, and
amazing.
I was so happy and so shocked. And then so went immediately back home, and the office was also in my house. There was a little wing to my house where we set up a small office for a finance person, my colleagues, and we hired a program manager and office manager. And so we started looking at everything happened really fast because there was such a huge need. And in 2002, most everything was destroyed. So buildings were all destroyed. So we actually renovated 3 buildings, like serious renovation with like new windows and doors and everything. Um, we ended up having 1,100 students in the first year. And of course, the Danish embassy, they were amazing because the ambassador himself always came to events and openings of the schools. And if he wasn't in town, his first secretary would come. And they continued working with us for 4 years because at the end of the first year, with 1,100 students and renovation of 3 buildings, we still had $20,000 left. I went
Wow.
back to him and I said, "I have $20,000 left." And he laughed. He was surprised, and he said, "Okay, we'll continue using that, and then we will continue um, funding once you need it." But after 4 years, they said that they have a policy with their foreign ministry's policy is that we cannot work with one local NGO for over 4 years. So I feel like I'm really blessed and very lucky. I think when you do the right thing, the universe will uh, provides for you because I didn't know, what to do after that funding was finished because we didn't do anything else except this one specific program, and I was not an NGO person, so I didn't know that we were supposed to have like different programs or different projects. And I didn't believe in projects because we were there to rebuild a country. So to rebuild a country, you need to have like long-term programs that people will benefit from. So donors projects were either for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, the longest. So I was really confused and I had no idea what to do.
So what did you do after that? So I think it was about 20 years, right? 20
I
years of
I did I was lucky, it was really amazing. I was in another event um, where I at the table there was a gentleman who I didn't know who he was, and he asked me what I'm doing, and I said, and then he introduced himself, and he said that he is the head of USAID in Afghanistan. I said, well, we're doing something that is very small and it's not really large enough for USAID, so we never really applied for USAID funding. And he said, what is it that you're doing? So I explained a little bit, and he said, well, come and talk to me. So I went to his office and explained, what's going on and why this is really needed. So he asked for an unsolicited proposal. We submitted an unsolicited proposal, and USAID continued the funding. The program became very big because only USAID could afford the program as it became a large program. We educated over 7,000 students. We always had 5,000 students at a time, and there were 13 schools in 9 provinces. We had over 220 teachers. So yes, and I was counting largely on USAID when we got registered in the US in 2022, and actually submitted an unsolicited proposal 2 months before USAID was shut down.
Ah.
Yeah.
So one question which, of course, which we'd really like to know is the students. We've done so much for them over the years. What were the reactions and what were the expectations? I'd like to know a little bit more about these girls. I mean, we know we hear, read, and see so much about girls in a lot of countries. What their aspirations, what do these girls want? What are they like? I think I
They're
would love to.
brilliant. I think Afghan women will end up running the country very soon because they're amazing. I've been in contact with some very young girls who are outside of Afghanistan right now, going to universities in various different countries. They're doing exceptionally good with their studies. They're getting A's in all their classes. They have very high expectations of themselves, and they're all committed to go back to Afghanistan. And the ones that we were teaching, it was also very, very inspiring to hear their stories, because most of the ones that were married, and many of them were married, they were sitting in 10th or 11th grade, and they were 20. One of them was 27 years old, and we had a school in Samangan province where I went and I said, "Why are you sitting at 10th grade now in your life?" And she smiled and said, "My husband wants me to, and I also enjoy it." I said, "So what's going on?" And I later found out that most of the husbands are not literate. So but it was difficult for men at age 20 to go and sit at any classrooms. But they wanted their wives to be educated so that they could help their children with their homework. And that's what she said. She said, "Now when my kids come home, I help them with their homework." And many of them, another one said, my life has changed. My relationship with my family, with my husband, has more respect for me. My children have more respect for me. My husband's family have more respect for me because now I'm educated.
I, I think you're a very courageous woman, Hasina. I mean, having really done this for so many years, on and on and on. And what is next for your nonprofit? How do you look at your nonprofit in the next 10 to 20 years? Where do you want to see it go?
I think I realized one thing because when I saw life changing in front of my eyes, it was really incredible. Even now, one of our graduate students contacted me from Oakland, California. She sent me a message on LinkedIn and said, "Thank you for changing my life, and I want to do the same because now I'm in California." She came from a very, very poor family. Her father was working in a bakery in Afghanistan, making $100 or $200 a month, and there were 10 people. Um, I helped her. I found a donor for her to go to American University of Afghanistan. She studied finance, and when she got out, she got a job with one of USA contractors for $900 a month. I saw she came over and I said, "So what's now?" And she said, "Well, first thing I told my father he never has to work again." So then he started working with another USA contractor. I think people that may have helped her to get out of Afghanistan with her husband and her three children that are now in Oakland, California. She says, "I have a job, and most Americans don't have a job. And I'm supporting my family in Afghanistan, and I'm supporting many other people in Afghanistan right now." So I receive another, I things always come. It's another one of our graduates. She became a donor. She's now sending money every month to aid Afghanistan for education. She is in Germany getting her master's. So when you see that your existence can change another human being's life so drastically, what else would I ever do in life? Um, I enjoy it. I love transforming lives, and so yes, and now because we had to close the office in Afghanistan and close the whole program, um, and then in Afghanistan for Education was registered in the U.S. in 2022. I always wanted to do something for these street children because I saw them in Kabul everywhere and selling magazines or something or pens or plastics, or they were scavenging in trash and polishing shoes. They shouldn't be really doing that. They're kids and they should be going to school. They either didn't have parents or they had parents, but of course, they're generationally illiterate. And they never really even think that education is an option for them because there's no way that the parents can even afford a notebook or 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 supplies or stationaries that they need for the school or uniform. Um, so it all just happened very quickly. We have some supervisors in Afghanistan because these are people that I really trust and they've worked with me for a very long time. And I know a very good private school in Afghanistan that my friends' kids were going. And those kids are now in Canada. And the oldest one called me and said, "These people don't believe that I grew up in Afghanistan and I know so much and I speak English so well." So I contacted this private school and they were very kind because it's not easy to work with these kids because they've been on the street. So they sent out teachers to identify these kids on the streets and then go and meet their parents or whoever they're living with. And so that's how we recruited these kids. And we started a very small pilot project, one in Kabul and one in Herat province. And now we're hoping to really grow this to hundreds and thousands of these kids because it's been very successful. They're very happy. They're learning very fast. And those kids that were scavenging in trash or weaving carpets, some of them are working at dried fruit factories. They are now, they want to become engineers and doctors and pilots. This one girl wants to become a pilot and um, build houses. I mean, all the things that they don't have. Or um, so I'm hoping that we can um, continue the program and make sure that their dreams will come true.
So tell me about your family. How does your family take this? Are they very proud of you, your your family members?
My family members are not really involved in what I'm doing. You know, I don't know if they are proud of me or not, but they don't say it, or
Okay.
they, in a way, I think they think that I think it's crazy, and
Yeah, that's exactly what I
sometimes
was
they say, you know, they should, yeah, she should be taking care of her life and doing this and that, and um, yeah,
yeah, but the
you know, it's
but
yeah,
at the
because I was there too. You know, if I didn't have that experience um, in in Pakistan, I would have still been living that life that they're doing right now. Yeah, it's just one experience that changes your life.
I I wish your nonprofit uh, all the best in the years to come. I'm sure there'll be lot many more girls that you'll be able to impact, and uh, I think that was a very interesting conversation with you, Hasina.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.